I'm going to start the recording now. All right.
Thank you. Kira and Brian, thank you.
No, thanks for scheduling the joint, because it certainly is, I think, a good idea for everybody to hear the same information in the same way at the same time. You know, I think there's always sort of a game of telephone that happens whenever you're sort of presenting material differently, you respond to different questions, and then people get, you know, sort of a different portrait of the overall project. So Amy, do I have screen share enabled?
Nope, I'll do that right now. Bill, you know what? Bill just reminded me, Bill Steglis just mentioned that I'm listed on the agenda with citizen comments. So just in the sake of following the agenda, can I step it back and just open the floor at this point for any citizen comments? If you want to make a citizen comment as a citizen and not a member of a board, because we are filled with board members right now, feel free, just unmute yourself and state your name and address and speak as a citizen.
7 Dennis Drive. I am not in favor of this at all. The Rascavich Auditorium is a beautiful auditorium. There is no access for the handicap right now. The trust even decided that they were not going to move forward and fixing the sound in there, because if we can't use it because it's not handicap accessible, why bother even putting the money in? There's, not only is it beautiful, couldn't even do Integrity Plus there this year. And it's absolutely, I don't know if everybody here has been in that auditorium, but if they haven't, they really should see it. It should be used. And not only that, I mean, you've got seats in there that have the plates on it dedicated to departed loved ones. And no one's even getting to see any of this. It's not being enjoyed by anyone. I'm not saying this project shouldn't go through, but I don't believe it should be coming out of the money for the trust. Right now, it's going to cost a lot of money for the what they need to do to make it handicap accessible. And, you know, someone's probably saying, well, it's not much, it's only 20,000. But you take 20,000 for that, that money's not building up to make it handicap accessible. You know, I think the money should be found somewhere else. And probably when the trust had said, yeah, you know, get the grant and we'll put, you know, money in, there was more money there at the time. We know what's happening right now with any money over and beyond what has to stay in the trust. There's not as much money there anymore. And I really think the money should stay in there and be built so they can get the Rascavich Auditorium handicap accessible.
Thank you, Linda. Any other citizen comments?
Jessica Bolte, 1081 Riverside Drive.
Okay.
I'm not in agreement with Linda's comments on that. I understand that the handicap accessibility for the Rascavich Auditorium is an important priority, and it should be an important priority. 65 Main was part of the original bequeathment from Mrs. Turtelot. I do believe that when the original ordinance was written, that was overlooked, and it should have been included for maintenance costs in there. In that funding, that was overlooked because at that point in time, Teague was in that building, and at that time, maintaining it. Unfortunately, when Teague left, we let that building dilapidate, and it's in the current condition it is in now. My opinion is we should spend some money on it. We get a lot of flack in this community as a school, as that we do absolutely, we're not producing anything for this town. This would be a good way for some of our students who are in some of those pathways to maybe put in some labor hours and use those skills that they're learning from those programs and make that kind of a marquee project that we can say, look at what we're giving our students. This is what they can do. We have our future business leaders. If we're using this as a business incubator, they would be able to use those for that. It would help assist some of our smaller businesses in town as well. I think it would be a worthwhile investment for this town.
Can I
Thank you, Jessica.
raise your hand? Oh, how do I raise my hand?
Just like
You
Oh.
can just State your name and address, state your name and address and speak.
Suzanne Witkowski, 12 Clarence Drive. I'm in agreement with Linda. I don't think this is a good way to spend the trust money. I don't think it follows the wishes of the Turtle Lot and family, in my opinion. I would agree with putting money in a better spot, but I also don't think we have a complete plan here. And I've been saying this right along at the Board of Selectmen meetings. We don't have anyone assigned to maintaining this building after it's completed. Is it a town responsibility? Because if it's a town responsibility, it really should go out to a vote to the taxpayers. Because they're taking on another building to maintain. We struggle with maintaining the school as it is, and then to add another building. Plus, we don't truly have a quote on this that's up to date. As far as what the total cost is going to be to update this building. Unless I'm, missing something, everything has gone up in price. We don't have a complete quote on this. We have grant funding that is earmarked or, is qualified because it is supposed to be a business center, but the talk is that it will be used for the school. So there's a little question in my mind there. And the other comment I have is, well, maybe I'll hold it. I'm done.
Thank you, Suzanne. My dog's making a lot of noise right now. I keep having to mute myself, so I apologize. Any other citizen comments? The floor is open. Yep.
This is Bill Witkowski, 12 Clarence Drive. There's no good way to say this, but why are we talking about this again? For 3 or 4 or 5 years, this keeps coming before the boards. Nobody's approved it. It's a bad way to spend money. For years and years, that Turtle Lot Trust was misused, not to the wishes of the Turtle Lot Trust. Joe Lindley, Joe I.R. Martino did a lot of work on that. This building has nothing to do with the school. Why we would take money that's earmarked for the 1909 building and put it into that building that frankly should be torn down. It doesn't make sense. It does not make fiscal sense. It doesn't make logical sense to me. It has nothing to do with school. I've been on the school board for 20 years. We can't take care of our own building, never mind take care of another building. This is just a bad way to spend money. And I am totally against it. I've been against it for 5 or 6 years now. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Floor is still open. Citizen comments.
Rob, man, I don't really, I don't know how many real comments I had. I had many conversations in the past with actually Joe Lindley about the 65 Main Street building and how it kind of just fell apart and wasn't maintained. I have a lot of questions about it. Some of the comments that other people just had answered a lot because I didn't know how far the Turtle Lot Trust was supposed to go, whether it was supposed to also maintain that building. And if it was, obviously that went by the wayside and it was a forgotten cause. But according to Bill, that wasn't the case. So it was actually from what conversations I had with Joe Lindley, even when Teague was there, it wasn't even like the deeded use that the Turtle Lot family had given it to the town because it was supposed to have a superintendent or a school teacher or an administrator that lived in the building. It could have actually probably saved, if it was used the way it was supposed to be throughout time, always, it might have even saved the town a little money in salary somehow with negotiations. I don't know how that even works, but I haven't really made a decision on how I feel about it. I'll get to that at a later date. My concerns are that the town's going to be, as Suzanne said, another building to maintain. We know what the cost of heating is. We're going to have to heat it, electricity, snow removal. And then my other concern is, of course, the deeded use of it, because we're using it. I don't know if the state's attorney's office or anything ever released anything to the town or if there was a legal opinion of the use of it. if we can even use it for a small business center, because it wasn't really supposed to be used for that purpose, just like it wasn't supposed to be used for Teague also. Those aren't shots for the use. I like that it was used. And I like that it gets, gets used or torn down, so it's not an expense of the town. And I'll bring up questions as I have them. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Amy, can I speak? I think we're going to do a presentation again, but I am not sure, so I don't want to lose out on my opportunity to say something.
Well, you're going to be joining in with Tara on the presentation, but you're welcome. You're welcome as a citizen, Brian, to speak.
I'm just going to speak, and I might repeat myself I think
Okay.
Tara's going to do most of the speaking at the presentation because she updated it, but if I can have the floor for a second.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's just keep it simple. Visually, what do we see around in town? Abandoned structures, degradation, non-support is what I call it. Taking little bites at the apple like sidewalk repairs, solar projects, other things that we have been talking about that are more positive for our town. Our children walk by these structures that are very visible. This building has been sitting here for 10 years, abandoned. Tira worked hard to go get full funding for the project. Now, I'm a builder. I do this every day of my life. Yes, costs are increased. Will we be able to do the full project? As a builder, I say, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do that. So we'll have to strategize that. Everything comes with a strategy. It's future use, whether it's part of the school in the incubator, as Jess was putting it. There's also other priorities like Linda was talking about with the handicap ramp. I get all of that, and we can prioritize. But doing nothing, there is a plan that's available to us right now. And the children that walk by and see this building just degrading, what does that say to them? Are we supportive of our own structures? We should take action on this. We have the money now. It is available to us, and something should be done about it. And I'm fully committed to this building. I will oversee it for nothing. I want to see progress in this town, and I want to support the children in what they visually see and give them an opportunity to be a part of it. I would love to see a building sign out there that says, Town of Thompson Board of Education committed to refurbishment of this downtown district. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Floor is still open for citizen comments. Citizen comments, just feel free to unmute yourself and just state your name and address. Okay. Last chance. Okay, hearing and seeing none, we will move on to the presentation. So Tira and Brian, you have the floor.
Am I share
Yes,
screen
you should
enabled?
have- Yep, you should be able to share.
Okay, great. So to be clear, this is an updated version of a presentation that Brian and I gave last year to the Turtle Lot Trust. And it is updated to reflect some of the things that we've already talked about here, that we have the $240,000 from the Fed in hand, but that grant was for hard costs, meaning construction costs only. And in order to be able to unlock doing the construction, we need the soft cost design costs. So that is what the Turtle Lot Trust unanimously voted on back in August to appropriate from the trust. So hopefully the presentation itself will answer and address many of the questions that you guys have asked. And then afterwards, obviously, of course, we can sort of drill down into that to make sure that, we all even if there is still some reluctance or disagreement, at least we are all understanding the same set of facts. So here you go. And as you can see, here is a picture of the building in more or less the state that it's in, although this is a year ago, so those rhododendrons are bigger. But and I'll just take a minute to read so that this is also a part of the audio record, and then we'll go on. So historic and current challenges, meaning to the town of Thompson itself. Obviously, Thompson was built in large part, certainly the downtown of Thompson was built on the mill-based economy, which of course, for decades now, we have seen the results of the collapse of that that form of economy. The neighborhoods that grew up around that, including North Grosvenor-Dale, really lost when the single major employer pulled out, and for reasons that nobody can really be blamed for, right? Because we had an imperfect understanding of how these things would shake out at the time. The neighborhood went on to be almost entirely residential, little to no storefront retail, so nothing to sort of keep dollars in the community. Fast forward to 2008, and of course we had that major recession, which was accompanied by a huge foreclosure crisis, drove property values way, way down. I know just on my street alone, when we moved in here, and we actually bought a home that had been foreclosed on, we were told by our across the street neighbor that multiple houses just on our street had been lost to foreclosure, and there'd been a big turnover in town at that time. And then, of course, we're all still living through the end of the COVID-19 pandemic period and sort of the uncertainty that arose around that, but also some lessons that we've learned there about how important it is to have walkable neighborhoods, resources within reach, which right now Thompson is very, very much lacking. So we're, proposing that this project is a part of how we put some of these crises of the past in the rear view mirror and have a more optimistic and aspirational view of the future, not just for its own sake, but really for the future health of the community. In one of these prior meetings, someone had made the comment when we were talking specifically about the idea of the small business incubator that, well, something like that can't work in Thompson. You have to go to someplace like Worcester for that. What I hear when I hear a statement like that is that there is no opportunity in Thompson. You have to leave Thompson to gain opportunity. And that is something that obviously, if people who are caring about the community and joining boards, if they themselves are holding these beliefs, that's something that we really have to work on. The idea of building opportunity, economic and otherwise, within our own borders, because that's what builds a resilient and sustainable community going forward. So certainly I'm not working on this alone. As you can see here, we have had residents and volunteers from Economic Development Commission, the Mill Sites Redevelopment Advisory Committee, Thompson Business Association, Thompson Historical Society, Trails Committee, people even beyond our direct town borders who are interested in, have contributed thought towards this project, and are still willing to do more work on it. And so we'll get now into where sort of we are with the history of the project. Here are some of those visuals that Brian's talking about. The remaining tower at the Belding Corticelli site, which, if there weren't a few trees in the way, I could see from my front porch. Quinn's Shirt Shop, which fortunately has been purchased, and we should have some movement on that by a private developer within the year. But still, this is what people see when they drive through our historic downtown, which is what should be our most vibrant, our most bustling neighborhood. It has the most potential to create those neighborhoods of opportunity of all of our 10 villages. They're right here in the center, but as Brian pointed out, for years and years and years, again, not assigning blame here, right? This is a small town with limited financial means of its own, but over time those problems compound, and this is sort of where we end up. Now you'll see this third bullet point refers to, you know, the past unfriendly regulations we had, specifically zoning regulations. That was one of our first projects to undertake this revitalization of the downtown core, making it friendlier to do business here, to locate here, to have infill development, meaning the spaces in between that which is already developed, specifically in the downtown neighborhood. And that was a real step forward. Just have to move a window here. Here's a little synopsis, which gets to some of the questions that have been raised about the relationship to the Turtle Lot Trust. And again, I'll go ahead and read these for the sake of the recording. At the time of the trust formation, founding members felt that the sad condition of the old school at that time had to take priority. A need to save the main building from dismantling for salvage, plus water damage and prior neglect, drove subsequent decisions. Joe Lindley initially supported working legally to sell the property to a contractor with a guarantee bond to ensure fulfillment of the restoration and all funds raised to feed the trust, but he changed his mind as he became more involved with the school board. He felt strongly that the town should honor Mrs. Turtelot's wish to have the rental income from the house benefit the Washington, D.C. tour following a town-led restoration. And the mission of the Dr. Jacob Francis and Harriet Arnold Turtelot Board of Trustees is to manage and maintain the Turtelot Trust in a manner which honors and complies with the wishes of the original donors, Dr. Jacob Francis Turtelot and Harriet Arnold Turtelot, for the maintenance and extension of the Free Memorial High School as a gift of the family to the town, with the intent of housing a superintendent. Maintaining the house in a manner that serves the school is a clear extension of the logic of the donors and therefore the mission of the trust. So here's a synopsis of where we are more or less to date, and this is updated from the last time Brian and I delivered this presentation. So we started the reclamation of the property by the installation of the Garden by the River Community Garden. The main users to this point have been the Girl Scouts and Teague. We have had some community use. It remains sort of a visual improvement back there. We have some park amenities and playground equipment. Teague was able to get in there this year, even despite the drought. With the building not being renovated, one of the challenges with that garden is getting water to it. We have been able to work around that, but it was always a goal of that smaller project to be able to hook into the water source to maintain that the garden more efficiently. Shortly after we sort of hatched the project to do the community garden, the natural and logical extension is to look at the building itself. As Brian points out, the town owns it. It is in obvious disrepair. It is vacant and has been for 10 years. A beautiful garden in the back with the degraded structure in the front. It's a mismatch, right? It's a bad look for the town, not just visually walking by, but philosophically, right? In terms of caring for its own assets. The obligation of the town is to maintain it. The town has been in abeyance of that obligation for years. The trust documents do not allow for the demolition or the sale of the building without seeking other legal means to do so. Right? If it were to burn down tomorrow, the trust documents are written, or the will, I'm sorry, not the trust documents, the will of Mrs. Turtelot is that it be rebuilt in kind. It was a gift in perpetuity to be maintained by the town. So these are arguments, of course, that we've made in the past. So last year, Brian and I gave this presentation, had a long conversation with the trustees, answered a lot of questions. At that time, the vote was 4-3, so not unanimous, but a majority, to authorize matching up to 120,000 in support of grant applications, assuming a 1-to-1 match. Right, and that was based on the estimate that Brian, with some assistance actually from Copeland Builders at the outset, put together. That's where that 240,000 comes from. The Board of Education subsequently effectively vetoed the vote of the trust, as they are given the authority to do under the way the trust bylaws are written. But at that time, I was asked to find grant funds that would cover the whole thing. So I pursued that through a number of means. I mean, I have probably submitted a dozen grants on this project to various sources. Some of them have been near misses, some of them haven't. But in the end, the one that bore fruit was a request through the congressional appropriations process for the 240,000 as described in the estimate that Brian worked up for the renovation, construction of the building, with the purpose that it serve as some form of small business support center. And that is a very open-ended purpose. It can be put into use in many, many ways. But once the renovation is done, there is an assumed performance period of about 5 years when it would have to serve that first function. So we've got a 2-year performance period on the construction grant, and then a subsequent 5 years where essentially we've got to give it the old college try for what we've said it has to be. And after that, we could revisit if it was an unsuccessful attempt and potentially put it to a different use. Potentially at that point, if we have a failure, it makes more sense to seek relief from the Attorney General's office to say, look, we cannot make this building functional for the municipality. Can we seek other means? At that point, I'm all in, right? If what we've proposed doesn't work, we seek another solution. So in light of the information that we had, the $240 from the Fed, which includes only construction costs, you know, in order to unlock those construction dollars, we have to have a plan. So structural engineering and architectural design. And the trust unanimously voted in August to advance up to that amount, $20,000, to support those soft costs. And we currently have an RFP open for the soft cost design and engineering. The period for proposals closes next Tuesday. I have given site tours for 2 firms, and I took a look at the spreadsheet of firms who have pulled the RFP. There's probably 5 or 6 Connecticut-based or at least New England-based firms who have at least looked at it. So we could get up to 5 or 6 bids, but I expect we'll have at least 1 or 2. This is a piece I wanted to talk about a little bit, the effects of vacant and abandoned properties on neighborhoods. Somewhat coincidentally, about a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago, I took a day-long webinar from the Congress for New Urbanism, which is a national nonprofit that works on neighborhood revitalization based on sort of those principles of livability and walkability. And they referred to a number of studies, one of which I couldn't find, which I actually thought was the most interesting set of facts related to this building. So it's not on the slide, but I'll get to it in a minute. But vacant and abandoned properties have negative spillover effects onto neighboring properties. And those effects are property values for the residents and businesses, the other property owners already in the neighborhood. And if you see here, research, and this research comes from HUD, research suggests that the longer a property remains vacant, the greater its impact on surrounding property values and the larger the radius of this effect. This impact is confined to within 200 feet of properties that have been abandoned for less than 3 years. After 3 years, however, the impact can extend as far as 1,500 feet. Vacant and abandoned properties are widely considered to attract crime because of the broken windows theory, that one sign of abandonment or disorder, for example, a broken window, will encourage further disorder. And the US Fire Administration estimates that there were 28,000 fires annually in vacant residences between 2006 and 2008, with half of these spreading to the rest of the building and 11% spreading to a nearby building. So the piece that I couldn't find from that webinar, but that was cited a number of times by the presenters, was that these effects can be shown with any number of vacant, abandoned, and delinquent properties within a neighborhood. But it's actually the first one that has the greatest total effect. In other words, it's the one that gets the ball rolling. Well, what is the first one in this neighborhood? It's the one that the town itself owns. So when you think of it in those terms, it becomes even more urgent that the town, as the responsible party for the town, right, responsible for itself, take care of and maintain its own assets to prevent these other deleterious effects. The other notable vacant properties on Main Street right now, St. Joseph's School, Superior Bakery, those are privately owned. They are not within the town's control. And one of them is currently on the market, I believe, possibly under agreement, but certainly under negotiation. And the other one, Superior Bakery, soon to be listed. I've actually been in communication with the commercial brokers. So those properties will resolve, but it is the town's responsibility to resolve the fate of the one it already owns. I just wanted to take a minute on that. So here you can see a very nice concept sketch that Steve Lewis drew up for us. Steve is the vice chair of the Mill Sites Redevelopment Advisory Committee and a retired professional architect. We've been using this to support grant applications. It was part of the package that got us to the $240,000 award from the Fed. So you can see our thought behind why this is such an important project. It is a town-owned property right in the very center of our densest, most walkable neighborhood, which we have absolutely been targeting for years now for revitalization. If you talk to people who have lived in this town their whole lives, and people come in to my office and talk about this stuff all the time, they will tell you how alive that neighborhood used to be. The shops and the people walking back and forth to work at the mill and walking to school. There's nothing to walk to right now. And although what we're proposing here as a small business center in and of itself does not create the walkability, as an incubator for neighborhood scale entrepreneurship, people coming out of this community to launch their ideas, it certainly would work in concert with what is now possible in terms of infill development to have that economic opportunity arise from within the community. So obviously, as the construction goes on, once it gets started, this becomes very visible, right? In that sense that Brian is saying, what do people see when they walk through here? Do they see abandonment and lack of concern, or do they see people moving forward? So that's exactly sort of the kind of push and optimism that can be generated by the simple act of taking care of what you already own. And this last bullet point is sort of a more updated one. As Amy mentioned, I think at the special meeting that the trust held, the condition was put on the future programming that it benefit the school. Now, to be clear, that was never not a part of it. It just wasn't necessarily at the forefront of what we were describing. I think it was Jess who brought it up. This could be a place for either graduates who aren't college tracked, who still have been a part of that sort of business pathways school to move a little further, to get a little more specific support in learning some more business skills, having a place maybe to have work share opportunity. The transitional students need a place to be, and their place to be is actually supposed to be off campus, from what I understand, you know, where they're learning business skills, life skills. This can be a home base for them. Certainly the building can support the community garden in terms of, you know, a place to bring in produce, wash produce. What my initial concept was, and what it has been the subject of some additional grants, and we'll get to that in a minute, is not just as a small business support center, which again is a very sort of broad and open term. In my initial concept, I'm talking about a support center for small agricultural startups and food system startups. And the rationale behind that is because we hear in focus group after focus group that we've done now for years and years and years, that although the mill economy for a long time drove the economy of Thompson, what has persisted and what people continue to value is the rural character of the community, the agricultural traditions. But agricultural businesses are very hard to start, right? So if we are focusing a business curriculum to small startup farmers, homesteaders who maybe want to go to the next level, do market gardening, create business plans, to people who want to create value-added food products, maybe learn some business skills to have a food truck, that this could be a place where, you know, we have not a limit, but a focus on those kinds of skills within the curriculum. And Teague has been a partner on this all along. They have a commercial kitchen up there. And as we have developed these concepts in the past, our rough plan is that if that remains the focus, that people taking advantage of the curriculum or the work share space here could then also have access to Teague's commercial kitchen. So what happens after renovation? And I think this gets to some of the points that Suzanne has made over time, and which, you know, I always, in sort of a very short time window, you know, in the meetings where it comes up, have tried to be as clear as I could and yet concise. It is a totally legitimate question. What is the plan? What is the plan? Well, I would think of it this way. We're talking about two different things here, right? Form and function. And it's a variation of the chicken and egg dilemma, which comes first. I've been throwing grant applications out for both pieces, the construction and the function. And whichever one came in first was the one I was going to start working on in earnest first. So what ended up happening, which was actually not what I expected, was that the construction piece got the grant funding first. So that's the piece that we can actively move forward with. While that is going on, the function, and by function, I mean the programming and use of the space in a business support means, the maintenance plan, and the sustainability plan, meaning how does it become financially self-sustaining, that's the next piece to work on. And we can be working on that while the building is being renovated. And if one or more of the grant applications that I still have open is successful, then we can do that in a very, very comprehensive fashion. The one that I currently have pending is a grant application to the USDA Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production Program. It does lean very heavily on the small ag and food system startup concept because it is a USDA grant. The funding request, which had no match requirement, was for $126,000. And that would support the work of the nonprofit partners who have been on board with this since the beginning, plus some additional design. And we can talk more about that if you want. It's not quite as relevant to this piece, but I'd be happy to sort of share more details about that. But it does include a funding request for site design of an adjacent 3.2 acres, which is the backside of Riverside Park that nobody can get to. It is lousy with invasive species plants, but it's a riverside parcel that if we were to have a design plan to append onto it, we could have a very nice public park there. And what we have proposed in that grant application is a design of a permaculture park, which some people have heard of free food forests. They are cropping up in many places in cities. Atlanta has a very well-known one right now. Boston has one in JP. You know, if you can have a forest-based park in Boston or Atlanta, surely you can have one in Thompson. We've got more forest. So the notification on that USDA grant is actually expected by the end of the week, because that's the end of the fiscal year for the Fed. In my experience, nobody ever hits their notification deadlines, but we should have some idea on whether or not we've been awarded that grant soon. If that one's unsuccessful, I've got another one stacked up behind it. But the partners who have come on board, although the grant currently open would fund their participation, have also agreed to donate a certain amount, a lesser amount of time as in-kind match for other grant proposals moving forward. So we have essentially a backup plan on how to go about developing the programming over a year-long period with input from the stakeholders, and that's the community stakeholders, right? So that's, how does it benefit the school? How does it benefit the Thompson Business Association and our existing pool of small businesses, many of whom are operating off their own kitchen tables, right? What makes it the most useful to the most people within Thompson? How do we make it financially self-sustaining? What are the fees? How do we draw people in? And how does it get physically maintained? Now, the beauty of a fully renovated building is the maintenance needs should be quite minor at the outset. And then as you build the program, your ability to maintain sort of the wear and tear builds along with it. And the organizational partners in the grant that I just mentioned, obviously my office and the commission and local stakeholder groups that we've already referred to. Connecticut Resource Conservation and Development Area is an agricultural advocacy group which works statewide, and they specifically do things like help veteran farmers set up. They have worked on agricultural commons projects. They're working on a big one down in Lebanon. Full disclosure, I am on their council as an at-large member. The Eastern Connecticut Conservation District is interested in helping develop that permaculture park appended to the back of the property. Teague, as we've mentioned, is interested in partnering to bring opportunity to their own client base, in addition to offering up the use of their commercial kitchen as the programming develops, again, assuming that it's on that sort of small ag and food system theme. And then Tyche Planning and Policy Group. Some of you may remember one of my predecessors in my position, John Guskowski. He is the principal in this group, and he has volunteered his time to help develop the public workshop process, which we would anticipate taking a year for, to really drill down and find the best way to make the building, once it is usable in its highest and best fashion for the community, while keeping all of these sort of pieces in mind. What have we promised the Fed? What have we promised the trust? What are we going to need to do to maintain it? So it is a partial answer to Suzanne's question, but the main point is, you know, we're going to work on the piece that we know we have funding for first, but then that other work goes on to establish something that we feel confident is a viable plan going forward. So that's my presentation. Brian, do you want to come in there since you are in fact the construction guy?
I'll just say a closing remark, I guess. Thanks, Dave. Obviously, everyone, a lot of thought has gone into this building. Okay, I want everyone just to keep in mind the visual aspects of what's going on in the downtown and the requirement for revitalization. Doing nothing is not the answer, okay, in my opinion. So it comes down to, do we want to do something positive and something that truly, in my opinion, will launch Thompson more positively, in a better light in the press? Or do we want to continue to have more of a blighted landscape? I think the choice is simple. I really do. We have $240,000 available to us. Is it fair to say, right now, or is that paperwork still like ongoing? It's
No,
imminent.
that money is in our bank account.
It's in our bank account. We are
Yeah.
ready to go. And I'm just looking for a favorable response from everyone. So thank you very much.
And I'm sure I can speak for both of us saying, you know, either one of us is happy to answer any questions, try to be as thorough as I can, because we are in the most rudimentary stages on the planning part, right? What we have is concepts, no matter how well described they are. Some of those answers may be incomplete at this time. But again, it was that which is going to come first. And what we have the opportunity to do now is the physical renovation.
I have a question. May I speak?
Yeah, absolutely. The floor is open at this point for questions for Tira or Brian.
Okay, Linda Jamilovich. I'm gonna work up to the question. I was at a meeting and someone who was here tonight was talking about being at a business. And I don't even know if the gentleman is still there in the business because he had no cell phone reception and he needed it for his business. I've been seeing that where our father's table is, there's been, I believe it's a counselor that's moved in there. And she's talking about having all kinds of trouble with her cell phone service. There's another board member who is not here this evening that has been saying how you can be at the bank there on Route 12 and she has no cell phone service. At the building committee, it was brought up by one of the members about getting a cell tower in. And what he was told, I had to go to the selectmen for the charge. And I don't know where we are with that. So here's my question. Do we have cell phone service down there? So if businesses do come in, they will stay there, or we don't know? That's the question, because it seems like it's that whole area in there that for some reason, they're not going to stay if they don't have the cell phone service.
Yeah, it's a great question, Linda, and I do have at least a partial answer. Because this topic came up, I've started attending Thompson Business Association meetings as of this year, and that was an important topic for them as well. So I did reach out to, what is it? It's T-Mobile that took over Sprint, right? No, Verizon, I'm sorry. I reached out to the area Verizon rep, and I essentially posed some version of what you just said to them. Like, look, this service is terrible. We're having to advise new people, hey, the only service you're going to get here is AT&T. Don't go with that Verizon. You know, essentially saying, look, you're not covering us. What's the deal? So the response was they actually do have plans for, I don't believe it was a new tower, but that they were going to be piggybacking on an existing tower in town, and that would in fact resolve the downtown reception problem. Now, the bad news of that is that it was probably a year or so out, but that is a finite period of time that we can work in. I don't think anybody would disagree that improper cell phone coverage is a problem for any business. But there is some hope on the horizon. Tommy, did you have a?
Yeah, so I am probably the said board member that Linda might be mentioning. So let me just explain a couple of things. And Linda, you're absolutely right. I kind of took it upon myself. I'm not praising myself or anything like that. The cell service in town is horrible. So I had actually a friend of mine that installs towers for Castle and Crown Castle, I believe is the name of it, full name. But right now, Crown Castle has submitted paperwork to the state because the way that it works, it's a big triangle. There's a tower on Rich Road on the other side of Wilsonville. And then there's one back over on Route 12. And then the closest one is over in Woodstock. So there's a whole gap. There's one in Quinnebog. But the way that the topography works, those signals do not hit the downtown area. So Crown Castle did some assessments. Long story short, there's 2 sites available, one which is just off of Fabian Road. And in full transparency, the land actually belongs to my cousins. It's the second highest point in Thompson, which would then hit a proposed site, which is behind the town hall, near the water tower on the school property. It would complete a complete triangle and it would cover the downtown area. Where it is right now, Crown Castle has it out to the state. It is being held up by the state, what is called the Siting Council, which basically approves any kind of a cell phone tower. So before anything can be brought to the town, it has to go through the Siting Council. And we know how the state works. So that's been out there for about 5 months now. I hope that clarification helps.
And that is, Tommy, even slightly different information than the Verizon guy gave me, although I was also aware of what you just told me. I didn't know if you wanted to share any of that, so I didn't want to touch it.
Yeah,
But,
no, and that's fine. And Tara, one of the things with obviously going with Verizon does not want to put AT&T on their tower, nor do they want to put T-Mobile. So by using an independent, they go out and they market it to T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint, and whoever else. So for the town, we would benefit by getting 5 people on our tower versus 1. So that was kind of the intent of going with an independent versus one direct carrier.
So we got even more of an answer, I think, Linda, than than I thought we were going to be able to give you. But the shortest answer is that it is being actively worked on, apparently in more than one direction. But it is an excellent observation. It has been a challenge, and it will continue to be a challenge for some time. But if this resolves within a year or even within 2 years, if we're talking about a year to get this facility constructed, by the time we are done, we should be close to having that in a more favorable position town-wide. So yeah, so thanks for that, Tommy.
I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind. I know that we've talked about the $20,000, which is what we're asking about today. And that is supposed to cover the soft costs for the design and the engineering. How confident are we that the soft costs will not exceed that amount?
I have some concerns about it. I'll be totally honest. But that amount that was suggested by Joe Martino at the last meeting is what was voted on and approved by the trust. I have some confidence that one of the firms that I believe is going to put in a bid will be willing to work with us competitively. Obviously, I can't say anything until I see the proposal and what they come back with. There are probably some strategies where we could cobble together a little extra funding for that. If if everything comes back and wildly exceeds that amount, we're going to have to re-strategize. I mean, that's just a fact. But I believe that at least one of those bids will come back in such a way that we can work with it. We've also asked bidders to essentially give us phased estimates. You know, what can we look at and say, do we really need this part? Do we really need this part? You know, what is the thing that will really get us to move forward? And how can we be the most judicious with these funds? I mean, if somebody comes back and like just plops a single dollar amount on us that's, you know, whatever, $60,000, and they don't explain what that's for, I don't like that proposal anyway, right? They haven't told me enough to be able to make a good decision. But we are asking bidders to be very thorough in what they're presenting so that we can really see if we've got any wiggle room.
Okay, and I have two more questions. One is, you know, just from a numbers standpoint, I mean, it sounds very logical to me to put forth $20,000 to then reap the benefit of potentially a $200,000 plus piece of property, to invest a small amount to get that much more back. It seems like a, you know, a tenfold investment. So in that regard, I mean, just from a money standpoint, though I know we obviously have to be watchful of how we spend our money, a 10-time investment seems like a good use of funds. If that's what I'm kind of gathering from what I'm hearing. My last question is I know we're going to the Turtle Lot Trust in order to fund the soft cost portion right now. Does this building always need to come from the Turtle Lot Trust in order to maintain it? Is there a certain aspect as to when, you know, if there's other maintenance or other things that need to happen at the building, can it be more of a town funded thing versus a Turtle Lot Trust funded thing? I'm not sure how that whole thing works.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I'm authorized to answer that question in some ways, but my feeling is that the investment by the Turtle Lot Trust is an upfront investment. I mean, the town owns the building. We know that the town owns the building. And the trust documents have some ambiguity built into them, unfortunately. But based on our last discussion, you know, I think you'd be hard pressed to say that it was the will of the Turtle Lot family that this building be ignored after they gave it to the town. I mean, that's just illogical. Oh yeah, just let it degrade. We're happy about that, right? So it certainly seems within the realm of logic that the Turtle Lots would wish for this piece of their legacy to also see support out of the trust that was set up to continue their legacy. But I take your point, and I don't think anybody intends that this just be a money pit for the trust. A part of that, you know, again, we're talking about the split form versus function. A part of the next phase, which would be determining the function, that's all the operations, right? Curricular, maintenance plan, and the sustainability plan. You know, and it's probably worth mentioning because deep in my heart of hearts, I still think this was the best choice. When I first proposed this, my sustainability plan included that the second and third floors would be refurbished as a rental apartment for an on-site, essentially property manager, and that as originally it was set up by the Turtle Lots, that you know, whatever rent was collected from that would go towards the maintenance of the building and any excess flow toward the school. To me, that was a great ecosystem, right? The whole thing sustains itself. The trust hated that. The Board of Ed hated that. So we've taken that off the table, but we still now need to come up with an alternate that will allow that. And I'm sure some combination of that is going to be fees for accessing whatever curriculum we put in there, right? So that's going to have to sustain, that's going to have to maintain the building. Certainly at least the utilities, right? And somebody to empty trash once in a while. And then as it builds its bank over time, builds its reputation, gets more use, you have the ability to go into that to do more serious maintenance down the line. You know, and all of that is very broad in this conversation because we haven't started that work yet. So I can't get too much more specific. But the point is, it's our responsibility once we're into the function portion of the master plan to make sure that we have created and described something that we can continue.
Any other questions?
I have a comment,
Yes.
please. Now, don't get me wrong. It is an absolute eyesore, and I believe something needs to be done. I've lived in this town my whole life. My family's been here over 100 years in this town. I got a lot of history here, more than most people on this Zoom meeting. But I will argue it is not the intent of the trust to fund a small business incubator. It's not the responsibility of the trust to do that. If this is a town-owned building, and if it is such a wonderful idea, why isn't the town funding this? Let the town fund it. Go to the Board of Finance and get to $20,000. If this is such a wonderful idea. I want something done, believe me, but I do not think it is right to take it out of the trust that is intended for the upkeep of the 1909 building. Thank you.
Hey, this is Linda again. May I make a comment?
Yes.
Okay, I still have to go with, I do not believe the money should come out of the trust. I wish it was as simple as needing a handicap ramp for the Riskevich building. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, I believe they had an estimate years ago that was over $100,000 or around 100,000 for an elevator. And that was years ago. So we know the price is much higher. So they need to keep money going in there to do this. And if you want to go with what the Turtle Lots would have wanted, I'm sure they wouldn't have wanted people not to be able to get into that Riskevich Auditorium. So again, I'm just like Bill. Not against this at all, but it should not come out of the trust. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Linda.
Jamie, can I
Yes.
say something?
Tom, yes.
So I'm going to speak as the president of the trust. Linda, you're absolutely right when it comes to the access and the accessibility of the Riskevich Auditorium. The $100,000 bid, yes, you are absolutely correct. That was when we were looking at doing the elevators. Bill Birch, myself, have reviewed a couple of options. And I know Bill is researching a few more that are in a more cost-effective manner, with still keeping with the integrity of what we want for aesthetic purposes. We don't have a solution as to that yet, but we are reviewing those. So as we were going through and as Tira was presenting, I have the will and testament of the Turtle Lots in front of me. And I was reading a certain couple sections in here, and yes, there is some ambiguity, but there's also some clarity. I've also got Joe Lindley in one ear, and I have Joe Imartino in the other ear. And I can honestly say that when you read the trust, the way that it is written, and it clearly states between Grovendale Villages and said town of Thompson, and it talks about the upkeep of the free high school, and then it also talks about the extensions of the high school and or buildings of its work and efforts in educational lines. That's what the intent of the trust was. The problem comes in is when the 65 Main Street building was deeded over to the town. If it was still part of the Turtle Lots, I think we would go forward with this with no questions asked, and we would try to get funding. The issue comes in because it's now a town property, but still has ties to the Turtle Lots. I would ask everybody to please get a copy of the Turtle Lot Trust, read the will and testament. I know there's a lot of, I want to say this, you're all friends of mine. And I hope I'm still going to be friends of yours after this. I too want to see the betterment of the town. And I know that we've talked about the $20,000 seed money. Originally, it was $120,000. Would the 3 boards feel better if that 20,000 was to come back to the Board of Trustees in due time as replacement of the seed money? I'm just putting that out there. I'm not looking for an answer. We've challenged Tara. Tara went out and she's literally got the funding. Yes, there's going to be new bids coming in and it may not cover the whole thing. And I know I sound like I'm going on both sides of this thing. I'm looking at it as the betterment of the town. Do I feel the trust should pay for it? Probably not in all retrospect. But I also feel that we have an obligation as a town to put some seed money forward. And yes, the market's gone down. I hope the funds will be there, but still, we challenged her. She went out and she did this. Maybe we put some better wording around recouping that 20,000 over said time. That's all I have to say. Brian, I think you raised some very good points. Terry, you raised good points. And I'm glad the 3 boards are together and we're hearing this rather than hearing or seeing the can. You know, you're hearing this and I'm hearing this. We're all hearing the same thing.
Right. Thank you, Tom. The one thing I want to express is that there's a major revitalization happening in our downtown area. The town was crumbling. It really was for years. It's been neglected. And I couldn't be more excited about the fact that we have beautiful sidewalks going in. We've appropriated some money to go towards the engineering design to revitalize Main Street as a whole. So the town is putting money. That's going to be $100,000 just for the engineering in the hopes of acquiring another lot SIP grant. I believe strongly that we will be able to do it because there's a whole plan around revitalizing Main Street and downtown North Grosvenor-Dale near the school and near the town hall. It's it's a start. It's the street of Main Street is crumbling. It's a terrible road to drive down, but we cannot do the paving until we have new sidewalks because the sidewalks are falling apart. So we are looking at it as a big revitalization plan. So it's not that the town isn't putting money towards that. We are. The trust gave a challenge to our director of planning and development, and she met that challenge. They initially committed 120,000. Yes, it wasn't a unanimous vote, but the appropriation of the $20,000 a couple weeks ago in our meeting was a unanimous vote. So I hope that all 3 boards will strongly consider this because the town is putting money towards revitalization, and the effects and the long-term effects are going to make a huge difference. They really are. So I'm excited, but that's all I have to say. Floor is still open. Suzanne.
I still think it's a slippery slope. And I'm gonna say that I haven't been in favor of this all along, and I'm still not, simply because Thompson is bigger than just downtown. and you're asking taxpayers if the town ends up with the responsibility of maintaining this building, it's a little bit more than just taking out the trash once in a while. And when you ask people from other parts of the town, Quinnebog and East Thompson and out here in Quadic, to pay taxes, higher taxes because of a building that makes downtown look better, when they can't put oil in their tanks, I think that's going to be an issue. I think that I just heard that 20,000 may not be enough. And we still don't know what it's going to cost to rehab this building. So there's really a lot of moving parts and a lot of unanswered questions. As far as town property goes, we have a track that's not usable. We have tennis courts that are not usable. We have soccer fields that are not usable. We have these properties that we have not maintained, is my point. Do we really want to take on another one? For something that might benefit the town? When, I don't know, maybe it could be sold or taken down, or I just think there's a lot to this that we don't have concrete answers to. And if we're gonna do something that is gonna cost the taxpayers money, we should really put it out to the taxpayers and let them decide.
You know, Suzanne, you said that earlier, and I probably I wouldn't disagree. That maybe it should go out to the taxpayers. Maybe it isn't just a board decision. Floor is open for anybody else's thoughts.
So I'll respond to Suzanne a little bit, hopefully I can get to the core of some of her concerns. In terms of asking taxpayers throughout the town to fund work in the downtown, I believe you would find, and I've actually asked the assessor to work this up, that the downtown provides a disproportionate amount of the tax dollars to the town. And that would be quite common, actually, in places with less dense, more suburbanized, more sprawling areas and denser downtown cores. It's the denser downtown cores that actually fund the infrastructure for the less dense, more suburban, sprawling areas. Paul's got a lot on his plate right now, but that's something I've asked him to look at. And I believe we would find the same here. But the idea that we should be pitting regions of the town against one another is the kind of argument we see from people who like to stand in the way of things. And I'm not actually suggesting that that is your intent here, Suzanne. They're very common arguments that they get thrown around all the time by people who just want to not put investment into their communities because they believe, rightly or wrongly, that somehow it's not helping them or benefiting them. I would argue that something that contributes to the overall, contributes to the economic health of the downtown, which is where ultimately, if we're going to have business infill is going to happen, then that does benefit everybody. It may be gradual, it may take time, but in terms of an investment, you're going to get more bang for your buck from an investment in your denser areas than you are in your outlying areas. That's just sort of the math of towns, as I have come to learn. I tried to address some of your concerns about, the planning and where we are in what pieces. And yes, when Brian worked up that construction estimate, it was before the costs for materials went haywire. But what we do know, again, similarly with, if we get bids for design come in high, and we can negotiate with an architect or a structural engineer to see, how can we pare this down so that we can move it forward? Can we take away a bell and whistle here? What are the pieces that are truly necessary? the building's got 3 stories and a walkout basement. We can make this, we can bring this thing online if we have the exterior, the walkout basement, and the first floor renovated, and then we tighten down the second and third floors, and we solve that problem later as we get more resources. We can do that, and we know we can do that. You know, it's a matter of using your resources in a strategic way, and adjusting to the reality that you get presented with. You always have to be flexible. You always have to be fluid. But to the other point that I think both you and Bill have raised is, you know, we could sell it, we could do this, we could do that. You're going to sell a renovated building at a better return than you are a tear down. And if the investment to do that is $20,000 from the trust or the taxpayers, and quite frankly, I don't really care which source it comes from. But we know how our local taxpayers view expenditures. The results of it, you can see out your window for the last however many decades, right? So this bypasses a potential obstacle. You know, so let's assume the worst, right? Let's assume that we get the building renovated. We give it the old college try on the small business center, and it's an abject failure. Okay, I'm with you. At that point, yes, let's go to the Attorney General and say, look, we just can't make it work as a municipal building. Will you help us? I'm all in, right? But what I'm not all in on is assuming failure from go and not taking the relatively modest steps, especially since we've had this influx of cash from the Fed, and doing the best we can with it now while we have the opportunity. So that, you know, and that might not address all of your concerns. I understand that. I don't expect that everybody will always feel unanimously about all issues, right? But it has been the town's responsibility to maintain the building for decades, and they haven't done it. So there is no other magical source that's going to do that. And right now you have a tear down, right? Because it's not worth anything as a resale, but we can make it at the very least so that if all of our aspirations fail, we have a backup plan and you can recoup your funds that way. I mean, and you know, every plan has to have all of its possibilities mapped out, and that's absolutely been what happens if I'm wrong. Okay, if I'm wrong, I will accept my wrongness, go directly to the Attorney General myself and say, look, we gave this the best try we could, and we need your help to get out from under this will so that we can sell it as a house.
Can I ask Tara a question?
Sure.
With the grant funding that you received,
Yeah.
is there a restriction that it can't be sold, or isn't there some sort of?
There's a performance period on what because it's been proposed as a small business center, right? Once it's completed, there is a look back period of 5 years. So 2 years to complete the renovation is the full period of the grant itself. And then for at least 5 years, we've got to use it as we've said we're using it. Right? So that's what I'm saying. We give it the old try. Whatever happens once that building is renovated, even if all you did was to stabilize the foundation and, you know, get the outside spiffed up and that basement and first floor fixed up, even if that's all that ever happened, you've got a better asset than you had when you started.
Amy, could I speak for a minute? This is Joe
Yes.
Martino.
Absolutely, Joe. I'm glad that you're going to speak.
Thank you. If the $20,000 from the trust is the sticking point, assume that 20,000 is going to come from somewhere else. Do we have any more objections? I hear no objections, Amy.
Right. So,
So
so you're
consider the
asking
20,000.
if the
So
20,000.
consider the 20,000 contributed.
Contributed?
Yes, it will come from non-trust funds and it will solve Tira's and yours situation with the naysayers. It just puts this issue, now we can proceed unless somebody stands up and comes up objection.
So I'm, are you?
I think
saying
we're all
that-
curious as to what you mean,
Right.
Joe.
Are you saying that the money, that you have a source of funding, an investor, a donor that's willing to put up 20,000?
Yes, I'm saying right now, if the objection goes away and we can proceed, 20,000 will come to get this project going. How do you think we got the work done at the old the old Thompson Library?
True.
It had to come from outside funds. It couldn't have been done any other way. The grant wasn't sufficient. So $20,000 doesn't have to come from the trust. Does anyone have any other?
Does anyone have any objections?
That was my only objection, that it was coming from the trust. I have no objection at all to this project. It should not come from the trust, in my opinion.
This is Val Martino. I just want to make a statement. I'm not against it. I want Tira to know, as a past historic building homeowner, I know you've got this 240,000, but I can tell you, I would probably put a bet on it. It's going to be almost double that. If you are taking on a project like this, you cannot take it on and give free rein to a contractor. It is truly, truly an experience that I've gone through, even renovating a current house. You don't know the hidden cost. I think about lead abatement. I think about usability of the space in terms of knowing how that is laid out. I think about, are you going to take it from a house type of setting more towards a business setting? And then when you go to sell it, what are you going to sell it as? My concern is, and again, I'm for it. I lived on that street for 19 years of my life. So you want to talk about deterioration. And my kids, my grandson would be 7th generation to this area. So I know that street quite well. I know the whole downtown area. We have to do other things as well. But in terms of this building, Tira, you have to stay on top of whoever is giving you these bids, because those costs can escalate in ways. If you are not experienced with renovating an old property, you have no idea what these expected costs are. And Joe can attest to that as well. You just have to be on top of whoever you're making these agreements with, because the cost of labor, the cost of materials, they have skyrocketed. And then there's of course, all the other hangups. My question is, has the building been inspected by an inspector that would typically sell to a mortgage or something, where they're coming in and saying, you really need this, this, and this? Because 240,000 for that property seems low to me.
Brian, you want to take a whack at that, since you're my construction guy?
I won't answer the latter question, but from a building cost standpoint, just to give a little bit of my background, I do historic renovation for a living as part of my business. Do I agree that $240,000 is probably light for a building like this, considering the times? Absolutely. But again, there comes strategy to that, as Bill Birch and Bill Wachowski and various other players, Tom and Bill Steglis, have seen in the building committee, that we structure our RFPs with contractors incrementally and prioritized. So we will probably bid out to contractors in some sort of priority fashion to be able to control costs. And clearly costs, as everyone knows, are very, very high today, and I do advise all of my clients not to wait or assume that the market's going to go level or down, because that is just not realistic. But yes, we definitely do need to control the way the bids come in, who's bidding it, and what that looks like aesthetically overall to make sure that we're walking down the right road that we want to walk down. So I'm well aware of that. I will work very closely with Tira in order to establish that guideline for the contractors, and then obviously walk through the overall process once it is underway in construction as well.
Is it your intent to restore it as a historic type of structure? And by that, I mean, you're not going to go throwing, like, I look at the Dollar General. That is so out of place for our town. We need to start
I agree.
thinking about, how things look within the town too, meaning everything doesn't have to be metal.
Yeah,
So
I'm right
curious-
there with you, Valentine.
Can I just jump in on that, T, before you
Yep,
respond to that?
absolutely.
I am a person that is sustainably proficient and committed in renewable energy and renewable buildings and reuse. I love the building the way it looks now. I want it renovated to look exactly the way it is now. I want the wood cladding to remain. I want the windows to remain. I want the visual appearance to remain. Obviously, there's form and function on the interior of the building that we will walk through with the designers at that appropriate time, all of you for that form and function of it that we'll strategize later. But I am 100% committed to making it look the way it is today.
And also paralleling what Jess Bolte had to say, is there any way to integrate the shop up at the school to have projects within, say, restoring
Yes.
certain things taken to the school where these
Correct.
kids can learn and save us money and that type of thing we have at this
Correct.
beautiful shop?
I agree. Tira and I have talked about that. Obviously, you mentioned lead abatement. That is of utmost concern to me. I want that to be addressed, but absolutely working with wood, as you know, there's a lot of wood products out onto that job site, and working with the school. We do need, when I was putting the numbers together, there was a lot of volunteer work or utilization of, various businesses around town or even the school. So that will play a role, a major role. I'll use that word instead. But yes, we want to make sure that we're engaging on the students and engaging, the professionals around town that can really show support to the project.
I honestly think that's a good thing. If you make it where you tap into local people, tell them what you're doing, they would work with you. But it's when we go outside the area and we have no community support. You get community support, you'll get people on board, but you also have to understand and be recognizing the costs that are going to be associated with a historic restoration.
And I think Tira and I will lean on all of you that are on this call right now as we're moving forward with this project to help in that regard. So congratulations.
And just to, to further give you a sense of how Brian and I have looked at this. Now, I myself am also a historic homeowner. You can actually see my house in the etchings in the Cine room, right across, catty-cornered from the old Belding Corticelli mill. So, I have my own big, crazy historic renovation that I'm concerned with. However, more relevant to this project, every time Brian and I have met somebody over there and they are talking about, well, what about the millwork? Because if you look at the millwork on the outside, it's definitely something you could not get today, right? And there are ways that you can go cheap. You can take all that stuff off. You can replace it with vinyl. And we've said to everybody, no, what we want to do is preserve the form, right? The visual form, the integrity of the historic character of the structure in as much as we can. Now, some of that character has already been compromised, right? There are vinyl replacement windows in there, which means it's impossible that that will ever be, for example, a historic register building. They'll look at those vinyl windows and say, are you out of your mind? There is a possibility that over time, as the neighborhood is revitalized, similar to the fact that we have a national historic district around the mill itself, that the Main Street neighborhood can also be essentially named a historic district, and that could be a contributing structure. That is a more reasonable sort of lower lift and would benefit actually other property owners in the district. We had an early conversation with a site writer from not SHPO, but the other one, Preservation CT. You know, and there's steps involved in that. So this is sort of a long-winded way of saying, yes, we're aware of it, and I am right there with you. The world does not need another vinyl-sided building. It just doesn't. It doesn't need more cheap and cheerful, out of the box, ugly, who cares about it, right? We're talking about a revitalization project, and that means making it something for everyone to feel proud of.
At this point, is there anybody else, for the sake, I mean, we could stay here a long time. Joe Iammartino has kind of caused us not to have a reason to have a vote. But the floor is still open if anybody else wishes to speak.
Rob Mann. Yeah, I just thought I wanted to thank Valentine. There were very good points on the cost going over the 240. I have some concerns about. I'm mainly, I try to look forward. I love the idea of saving the building. I don't have an issue with that. I love that Tyra got the grant. I'm not against that. My big concerns, I look forward. I always look, you know, we're like the highway department, we're doing the new public safety building. We know we're going to have a lot more budgeting things where the town's going to have a lot more expenses. We're going to have to take care of that. Heat, just the base, you know, basic heat, electricity, water, sewer. We have all those things we're going to have to pay for. It'll be the same with this building. The grant is a federal grant. I believe that most of the meetings I've ever attended in town that we have funding coming from the state or the federal government. Most of the work has to be done and has to be done at a certain wage because it's grant money. It can't just be done by, you know, Joe Carpenter down the street that does things in a wonderful way. It has to be done by, you know, a lot of time it's not necessarily always union labor, but it has to be, what's the name I'm trying to look for, Amy? Help me.
You're looking for prevailing wage.
That's for prevailing wage. I had it in my head earlier and it just wasn't coming to me now. So that I'm sure drives up costs a lot. I know recently we just got some kind of grant for the library roof and I was like, oh, thank God. Because that was a huge thing that we've been trying to put money aside for years and it just never gets done. Just like this building sat and, you know, it was neglected for so many years. The school gets the same thing every year. We try to prioritize everything and we put this thing the school needs on the side and we say, this is the most important thing. And we go after that every year. So this building's going to be in the same situation every year. You know, if it's going to have wood clapboard siding, you know, that's going to have to be painted every 5 or 6 years at a huge expense too. So I try to look at the things that, you know, the maintenance is going to be big on this building, especially if it's an older building. You know, things that on every building we have in town runs into the same issues. The school, the HVAC units go down, the boilers go down. Things age. 20 years later, we'll be in the same boat trying to get funding to take care of this another building. And those are my main concerns. The meetings basically was just for the $20,000 to be a yes or no from the Turtle Lot Trust, I believe. If somebody's making a donation, we don't even get to really have any discussion on that. The meeting was never whether we were voting to make this project go forward or not. It was just about the $20,000 according to the agenda. So that's wanted to say those things that my concerns are long term. I don't get me wrong. I hate seeing that building sit like that all the time, but I think there's more important priorities in town and they just continue to pile up. They always will. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. You know, one of the things, because going back to one of the trust meetings, I was actually one of the people that voted against In my mind, I just wanted to sell off the property. One of the arguments that was made at the time by Joe Iamartino and Robert Wurge was that it's of no value in the condition that it's in. So as Tira stated, yeah, we've got the 240,000. We have a 5-year performance. So maybe 7 years total. If it doesn't work out, we have a building that at least is viable and more profitable to sell in better condition than what it is now. So I think we'll make the money back and more in the end. Having received a grant, I think we'll end up on the good one way or the other. And we'll have a building that's revitalized and it's not dilapidated. And hopefully by then we have brand new sidewalks and a brand new street. So as much as I was skeptical, I do see the value. I see the value in that we have an out if we need to. But in the
Amy-
meantime, I'm going to believe that it's going to work.
Amy,
And
can I say one thing after you?
Yep.
So, Joe, however, or wherever that money comes from, thank you very much.
Yes.
Whoever the donor is, please thank them. The thing that I just want to say to everybody is, we need to do more of this. Now, obviously, it'd be nice to get more free donations, but besides that, the 3 boards and citizens, we need to have more of these tri-board meetings to hear obviously everything in one go round. And then we obviously go back to our respective boards. But I think all of us are challenged with many difficulties, and we're going to have those difficulties again, especially every time it comes up with budget season. But to have all 3 of us here, we're communicating, we're working together for a solution. Tonight's solution was a little bit easier, but I think it kind of sets a very nice tone that the 3 boards can come together, and I hope we do more of this in the future. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Tom. And I was remiss. Thank you, Joe Iamartino, for the donation, or whoever the donor is. Yes, please express our thanks. That left me speechless, if that wasn't obvious. So, are there any other questions or comments? Yep, Rob.
Rob, can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
So I'll be short because I know it's getting late and I won't repeat things that have already been said, but I did want to just comment on the descriptor that you just described in terms of the downside, and Tira was on this too. You know, when we look at things outside of the will of the trust and those pieces, if we just look at, you know, this as a business case, you know, there's a base case. And then from that base case, you look at if things go better, there's an upside to it. Things go worse, there's a downside to it. And then you want to take it to an extreme to say, what does the catastrophic case look like? Meaning everything went wrong. And in this case, I think most of us on this call, if we owned the property and had access to $240,000 and we had to put up $20,000, I think most of us would do that. And if it only got 1 floor done and not all 3, or if we used it for our in-laws instead of someone else, like we wouldn't be overly concerned about all the, I mean, the details are important and I get that. I'm not trying to discount the details, but I think on the surface, it just makes sense to do it. And it's, you know, Linda brought up the other projects that the trust would like to do. And it's really about doing, it's not an or, right? It can be an and we can do those other things. They may take time. I think it's fantastic, the amount of improvements and the investments that have already been done over the last several years. Massive amount of money that was put into the window projects and other projects. So I think when we think about affordability, you know, as a town, we can afford it. It's just we can't afford everything. So if we want to do this, then there's other things that we have to put off or we can't do. So I agree with what Tom said. I think it was very valuable to have the groups together to hear not only we could all have heard the presentation independently, but to hear people's thoughts and comments and perspectives, that piece would have been lost in separate in separate meetings. So I too want to thank Joe. I think it's remarkable that we could have a donation like that to get it kicked off. And I do think folks have used pride and visual and what the town would look like. And, you know, in the end, it's going to make the town better. And it's going to be a better, not only a better visual for the town, but something that can be useful for the town, something to be proud of for the town, among other things that have happened over the years. So I fully support the project. Also talked with Tira about helping her along the way, helping you, Brian, in small ways. I can't run the project, but I'd be available to help as well. And I, again, want to thank Joe. That's quite a remarkable and generous come forward with the donation. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
One more thing, Amy, if I can.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
was not aware of a need for a lift or an elevator. I didn't know that was something that was going on in the background at the 1909 building. But I know all of the major elevator lift companies in New England, and I'd happy to call all of them to get them to look at the job.
Right. Thank you, Brian.
I have done over $1 billion in construction in my career. I know the players. So just reach out to me.
And Brian, you're absolutely right. And that's my oversight too. And Bill Birch and I will be calling you. Thank you.
Great. Any other comments, questions? Okay.
Well, I just, want to thank all you guys for taking the time to come in tonight to listen to me and to Brian again, and to again hear the concerns and the support. I push back hard against the concerns because I'm invested intellectually in the project, and I think it's important that the town continue in this positive light, right? I can only speak for the time that I've been here, right? So I've been here 3.5 years on staff, 7 years as a resident. And, there's almost $5 million of grant funding going into the town in general, but a lot of it concentrated in this district. And if we can push those things through, it's potentially transformative. And I cannot stress enough how important it is for small towns to be able to have economic development that is homegrown and doesn't depend on the idea of an outside company coming in and solving the problems, because that's ultimately a very vulnerable way to approach things. And the example I like to use is actually the mill. So for all these years, there was one employer that employed hundreds or maybe even 1,000 people, right? I don't know how many. And when that one big employer goes belly up, it's catastrophic. When in your own community, you have 100 businesses with 10 employees or 1,000 businesses with 1 employee, that creates a more sustainable ecosystem, and creating the conditions under which those things can flourish will help this town be that community of opportunity that it hasn't been able to be since the one big employer pulled its plug. It's part of what you guys hired me to do, is advocate for that kind of change and to try to push it forward. So, thanks for the questions and thanks for the support, and thanks, Joey and Martino. We'll be talking soon. Like maybe tomorrow.
Thank you, Tara, and thank you for continuing to push with the Board of Selectmen and the rest of the team there to make this town better. So thanks again.
And on that note about we are opening the bids on Tuesday for the 65 Main Street project. So that'll be at our Board of Selectmen meeting, if anybody wants to tune in for that.
So I guess I'll end with one open question that does not have to be answered tonight. let us make an uncomfortable assumption, which is that every bid comes in and it's over that 20,000. Can we reopen the conversation with the trust or the town if there's a deficit to make up? And I don't think we have to answer that tonight, but it is something we may have to consider. I mean, Brian and I will go back and make sure that if we get something that we think we can make competitive, we will do so.
Well, let's try to believe.
Tara, just, oh, go ahead.
Joe, were you
Let's
gonna
see what
say something?
the numbers look like.
Yeah.
Tara, and then we can talk. Yeah. I'll-
Thanks, Joe.
All right, any other comments, questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn this tri-board meeting?
I'll make
I'd
the
like to make-
motion.
I'll
Okay,
second.
Jess makes the motion, Tom Angelo seconds. All in favor of adjournment at 8:49 PM.
Aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna assume nobody's opposed. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.